Okay, we've been talking lately about the segments
Yes.
of the rehearsal process. And essentially, we really talked about the main first four.
Right.
Read through the script interpretation, the read through where you're making sure that the script interpretation sunk in, and the fourth being the first time you let them follow their impulses to start moving, still in the semicircle, still not trying to be on the stage. The fifth, you start to go to those other things.
So with the fifth, you start to go to the set or
Yeah.
some,
The things that we talked
makeshift, and you've worked your way through the whole play four separate ways.
Right. But what we've talked about so far, the fifth segment, is really where most people start rehearsing. Most people do this. Director likes a play, he reads a play, he likes it. Somebody tells him, oh, the next time you're directing, look over that play. He reads it. Oh, I like the play. That's all he knows, really. He gets a sense of it. I'm talking about 95% of the productions.
Right.
And by the way, that's also true in probably 95% of the movies.
Mm.
The director doesn't sit there and do all of this kind of work most of the time. They have a feel for it in a movie. They start thinking of shots. Or even with that, they're talking with the producer about where we're going to shoot it, and they're doing all kinds of other things. Those things that are in the producer's purview, the director will have something to say about. He'll say, well, no, I don't think it's a good little town for it for these reasons. The next town over is better. You'll see the bank is right next to the drugstore, and since we have a scene in the drugstore where he goes to the bank, all that can be shot much more economically. And so the producer will say, well, I don't know, we get a good deal in this town, whatever all of that stuff goes on. But he'll have read the screenplay in relation to thinking about the shots he wants to make, whether he's going to do a close-up, we're establishing, we're a long shot, who's going to be in the shot kind of thing in relation to the story. The director will think about that. But he thinks about it cinematically mostly. If we went back 50 years, directors didn't do that so much. My favorite director,
Fred Zinnemann,
is, as I've said before, Fred Zinnemann, because he does the play.
Mm-hmm.
He must have been, I don't know that he is, I thought about maybe looking this up online before today, but I didn't have a chance to. But I would bet he has the theater background, because he's not always concerned primarily with shots. You can see it in the movies. And yet I just watched High Noon over the weekend.
There's a lot of stylistic shots in that, of the clock.
A lot of great shots. The best series of shots, by the way, are the series of shots down the tracks. The tracks, you're down almost at track level, and the tracks go way off into the distance, empty. Second time, empty. Third time, empty. The clock, time's going by, empty. Then the last time, the train is coming. So that's a little bit like a man who is waiting for his girlfriend to come over, who's hot and horny. He keeps looking at the door, no door. Look at the door, no door. Nobody there. Looks at the door, and then the door starts to open. Voila! Here we go! So that whole series of shots is terrific in that movie. But he is mostly, you can tell by what he does, he's mostly concerned with the logic and with what the actors are doing in that logic, the performances, because I don't know if the people who worked with him would say he was an actor's director. Most of the time in the movies, when you get actors saying, oh, he's terrific to work for, he's an actor's director, the very next thing that they say is, he lets you do whatever you want. So, they think that makes for a good director. He lets you do whatever you want. But in our recent history, and by recent I mean the last 30 years or so, movies are made by people who've been to film schools, and who NYU is one of the American film schools that's highly thought of. And Jim's son went there, and I have talked to him. He graduated, and I have talked to him about what they learned, what they were taught. And boy, they're not really taught what they need to be taught. The people who are teaching them don't know anything about acting. But at any rate, they don't, in the movies, the people have not been trained to deal with actors. They don't know what to do with actors and so forth. So if they get a script, they're already thinking of the shots. And often movie scripts are written much more on the line than a play script. Because, for instance, in an action movie, it's not a highly psychologically motivated thing. The bad guy's running toward you with a gun. You don't have a gun. You run away. All the action is on a melodrama level.
And don't shoot often means don't shoot.
Exactly. That's right. That's all it means. So they don't really know what to do. So they don't even rehearse or anything else. They just have people in. They start shooting them. Woody Allen, I've heard it said, won't let you read the whole script. You just do your scene, and you don't know what that is until it's given to you. Now, why in the hell would he do that? Because he wants more than anything spontaneity. And if you're not getting spontaneity along a logical line he likes, he just keeps you doing it. And he will say to people, no, it doesn't matter the words. If you want to say it in your own words, just go and say it in your own words and so forth. Because he doesn't want a line reading. Mm-hmm. He wants it to look like human behavior. Mm-hmm. And he doesn't know enough about acting to know how to get that from people. What actually one does to, again, that horrible word, manipulate. But guide them, lead them, move them into doing what it is that they're supposed to do. So therefore, he just, at the expense of his own script, which he wrote, also, by the way, that tells you a little something about his script. If he thinks any word that the actor may say is just as good as what he wrote, then it means he doesn't value in the same vein what he wrote, the verbal pattern of what he wrote. In good plays, the verbal pattern of what the author writes, it's terrific. It's the best way to say it. It's not just spontaneous. It's the best way to say it.
Can you think of an example
Yeah, Virginia Woolf, when he kills the baby. Earlier in the play, she says, George, I looked at you tonight. She's berating him. In the movie, it's after they've been out to that dance hall thing and everything, and they're standing out by the car, if I remember correctly. And she's berating him, and she said, I looked at you earlier tonight, and you disappeared. Poof, just like that. So, when he kills the son, the imaginary son, the last thing he says to her is, and he's dead. Poof, just like that. Now, how do you like it?
Touche.
Right. Yeah. So, that's well written. That's not accidental. That's chosen. Mm-hmm. And the audience doesn't say, oh, he's making an allusion to the earlier thing. They don't see it. They feel it. They've heard that said before. They don't remember hearing it before in their consciousness, but their subconscious plays that note that she was saying to him, and they get it subconsciously. And it moves them subconsciously. They just don't know technically, intellectually, that they've gotten it. Hedda Gabler. Now, Hedda Gabler is perfectly written, I think, in the lines. But, in other words, I think the way things are said are the best way they could possibly be said. But in a sense, there's another element there because you're dealing with a translator. When you take, I told you that when we did the Chekhov pieces, I didn't take anybody's translation. I took 4 translations for each one of them. And they weren't always the same 4 translators. But I didn't want 1 translation or 2. I wanted to get a number of voices. And they're not all written the same verbally. Any line is not all written the same verbally. In one translation, it doesn't say, yes, but I'm leaving the farm. The second one, yes, but I'm leaving the farm. The third one, yes, but I'm leaving. That's not what you get. That line is translated differently.
Yes.
So the first time they say, yes, but I'm leaving the farm. The second time will say, I'm not taking any more of it, so I'm leaving. Mm. The third one will say something else, and the fourth one may say something else. Now, they don't just toss away the word the farm if it's in the original. yes, I'm leaving the farm. Maybe the second time is I've had too much of this, I'm leaving the farm. They won't throw away something that is important, but they don't put it into the same vernacular.
Mm-hmm.
But whenever I've read Hedda Gabler, they must have had good translators. Oh, by the way, translators are translating the language. So what are they doing? They're translating the surface value of a line. They're not known to, and they're not taught to translate the underneath, the dramatic meaning of the line.
Right.
So some translators are more onto that intuitively, and some are not very onto it at all. So the translation is not very good.
Yes.
But whenever I have read Ibsen, he must have had good translators, because every time I've read Hedda Gabler, all the lines in that say so succinctly and right on exactly what they're supposed to say.
Each time that you, even as you read 3 different translators?
Well, I've never read them back to back to back like that, because when we did Hedda Gabler, I don't think I rewrote it. I definitely did for the Greeks. I definitely did for all of Chekhov, because there were other problems in dealing with the Chekhov plays.
But each time you've read Ibsen, you were satisfied with the translation, that you didn't feel like you had to check out all the translations.
Well, I'm not sure that's true of all of his plays. I'm only talking about Hedda Gabler. Every time I read it, I am appreciative of how great those lines are. So I say the translators must have been good, because the greatness of the lines, verbally I mean, great because they say very well what is being dealt with, but they don't do it on the line. They say it in a particular way where you get it, and it's very succinct what the underneath thing is, what the dramatic meaning is, but they don't say it
Obviously and
on the line.
Yeah.
But the language that's chosen is perfect for that. But for instance, so that makes me feel those 2 plays are almost perfectly written. Well, screenplays, you'll never find a screenplay that's well written.
You said 2, Hedda Gabler, and did you say those 2 plays are perfectly written? Hedda Gabler
Virginia Woolf
and Virginia Woolf.
Hedda Gabler. Because the person working on it was appreciative of the things that the verbal pattern. There's a best way to say the underneath thing, and yet seem to say what's being said on the surface level. So at any rate, as I say, most people come to a play or come to a screenplay, they have other things in mind, certainly in the movies, than doing the kind of analysis that we're talking about, that a director needs to do. And most of the time in play situations, the people aren't trained to do it, they don't know to do it, they just like to play, they get a general sense about, well, this touches me because it's about, they would read Our Town and probably get, that sense of, well, it's, you should learn to stop and smell the roses, without knowing how each little segment really buoys that up. They'll just do it so it'll be a generalized production. And they don't even do any of the things we've talked about so far. The guys will not spend so much time knowing the value of every single piece and every single element of the play. They just get a general sense, I like the play and I like what it's talking about. And also, they don't make sure that the actors know the lines for their dramatic value, because they don't know the lines for their dramatic value. And so where most people start after a read-through, and they do just to sit around and everybody reads their own part and so forth, and all of the troubles that come from that they don't deal with, they don't know how to deal with, and they don't even recognize. And then they go right to, they may have another read-through, I don't know, just kind of, it's to get everybody into the play a little or whatever else.
Or they may go to what you...
Or they may go immediately
table
to
reads,
that first thing. Or they may immediately go to, well, tomorrow we'll work on Act 1. Mm-hmm. So what we've talked about up to now, 95% of the people aren't doing. They don't know to do it. They haven't been trained to do it. They don't realize. And so that's one of the basic reasons why when you go see something, it's mediocre at best. They haven't done this work, which is to bring this to fruition. I think it's part of the American culture that things are more casual than they have been historically in other significant cultures. Certainly, the British when they ran the world, they were not so casual about values, very strict about them. Genghis Khan was very strict about what he wanted done as he captured the world. So was Alexander. So were the Romans. But America has always been much more of a casual thing. I remember when I first came to New York, having studied mime about a year previously. And by studying it, I mean this man who, Yas Hakashima, I mentioned to you before, was a world-renowned on the level of Marceau. Not so well known in America as Marceau was, but all the rest of the world knew him very well. And he came through Memphis, and he did a performance at another of the colleges in Memphis when I was in college, and the director of theater saw it and said, I got to get this guy. So he signed him up and paid him a lot of money to come the following summer and teach for the whole summer. So for like 3 months, I took this course 5 days a week in mime. So it was a lot of work. It was, like 4-hour days and so forth, where you did a lot of mime exercises and so forth. And I'd studied all this time with Yas Hakashima. So I came to New York. That's a lot of technique work you do. Mm-hmm. By technique work, I mean you learn how to move your body. You learn from a basic principle called isolation, which means you isolate the movement of one part of the body from others, so that now when he puts his hand on a wall, the rest of him moves, but the hand stays there. So you learn how to do that. You do all kind of muscular exercises. It's not an intellectual training, mind training. It's all physical. And you do all kinds of exercises to learn how to do these things. And so I came to New York, and so there was a performance of a group. They called it New American Mime. So a mime group, using New American Mime. So I thought, what the fuck is American Mime? So I went to see it. They had no technique whatsoever. They just weren't talking. And they were walking around gesticulating to each other. They thought that was mime. They couldn't do a goddamn thing a mimist does. They had no technique whatsoever. They just shut their mouths. That's a very casual approach to mime. So it may be that American culture, this is the point I was trying to get to, that it may be that American culture has a big influence on American culture makers, in that so many of them are casual about what they do. They're casual about it. They don't realize they're casual, but you read a play, you kind of like it, you get it that it's about do stop and smell the roses, and so then you say, well, I'm going to direct that play. Let's see, who's good for the stage manager? The people I know. I'm going to make sure he comes to the audition. Then they come in, and then what they start doing is they read through, and then the second time they say, okay, Act 1, Scene 1, we'll rehearse tomorrow. And they come and he starts, quote, directing. And for a lot of people, give them the blocking right off to get that out of the way. So now the person's coming in and marching around to various places on the stage and so forth. Part 5, segment 5, for what I'm talking about, is where they start. Well, then whatever they do has no foundation. And again, that's why there's so much mediocrity and less than mediocrity when you go see any production in town. Now, it's a different thing with a Broadway musical, with the chorus, the singers and dancers. It's not casual at all. In those areas, it's not casual. If you can't sing, they don't say, well, I kind of like he can almost do it. In singing and dancing, they're not casual, very specific. But everybody else is casual. Many directors in the movies use directors of photography, cinematographers, as the DP. They don't decide the shots, except they'll say, take a close-up on that. But how the shot is framed, they let the DP do that because he's a cinematographer. That's what he's supposed to be good at. And so it's even more casual. Even the shots, they're not taking themselves. So with all this casual reality, people have left out all of the levels. That, 11 weeks talking about. They don't do any of that. They don't know to do it and so forth. And so therefore, they start out without any real foundation.
Were these 4 stages and all of the stages something that you had developed through
Years.
Through years of directing?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, not just through years of directing, because you can do the wrong thing for years
Yeah.
and not know any difference.
Right.
But I've always been a student of, as well as somebody who was interested. And I was taught certain things in college, in both undergraduate and graduate directing courses. And once you get a recognition that everything that's done in any art form is going to the same end, and certainly in collaborative art forms, people deal like, well, the costuming doesn't have anything to do with me. Let the costumer come in, and then when they'll waltz around on the stage in those costumes. I just want to make sure that they're playing the scene and so forth. But it was apparent to me early on in college that all of these elements have to play harmonically together, going for the same thing. And therefore, as I've directed over the years, and once I started studying with Lee and learned, I already knew that actors had problems, but I didn't know that specifically. I didn't know what caused it. And then I studied with Lee for 7 years. And during that period of time, I caught on to all the things that our actors are doing, what they're like, what they're thinking about, what they really... Even Lee never said actors... The real central reality of an actor is the dirty little secret. He just wants to be thought of as good. He never said that. But I've seen it. That comes out of my experience of dealing with people, of directing things, of studying acting, of teaching acting. All of those things to me have not been separate at all. They've only been a slightly different stance in relation to the same art object. I've taught playwriting classes. I'm dealing with exactly the same things, but from the other end, as I've told you before. So everything I do is holistic, and the recognition of that came sometime in college. I don't know why, except, as I told you before, the other holistic approach, I was crossing the campus that time, and I saw all the different buildings of different subject areas, law, English, botany, and it hit me like a ton of bricks. They're all just talking about exactly the same thing. What exists? What are the truths about what exists? Even mathematics, that's what it's talking about. Logic is talking about that in philosophy. Philosophy is talking about it in philosophy. They're only talking about what exists. Let's try to describe it. It's the same thing, just from different viewpoints of view.
It's the same, the elephant, and it's the different part of the elephant, but it's all the elephant.
Right. There must have been something in my mind which was recognizing the integration holistically of all the things at that time, because I have never thought anything different. No. The end result, though, is the reason that you go see things and they're not well done is not that the people are idiots, not that they're non-intuitive, not that they're just dilettantes. All of those things are sometimes true. But sometimes well-meaning people try to do the best they can, and it does not function very well. You get a mediocre production of the play. Well, that's because one has to do these elements. One has to do the things I've been talking about. If you don't do them, you can't get where you're going. In other words, unless you know everything about the play there is to know, unless you have a first read-through which is productive rather than destructive in its potentialities, unless you have everybody know now what their lines mean dramatically so that they play the right values all the way through, unless you know now that these people's urges to move will move them, unless you do all of the things we've been talking about, what you'll get, the results of it will be the things that you see that are mediocrely done. Well, what's mediocre in something is that the people seem to know their lines. Somebody has given them costumes which don't hurt. The lighting is illuminating, but it doesn't illuminate the plate. It only illuminates the people walking around on the stage. The acting is natural or so-so. It plays the lines on the word value as if this is what the people are talking about. That's what's mediocre about it. You sit in the audience, And if you know something about what's supposed to happen, what you see is what's not happening. General audience will sit there and they'll be a little bored, and at the end of which they say, "I don't like the play too much. The play's kind of our town, kind of homey, folksy. It's not a New York play, It's I guess if you're from a little town, you would like it better." No, what they don't realize in the general audience is none of the things that have been done to their optimum. And many of the things that needed to be done haven't been done at all in the rehearsal period. So unless you do the right things, it's impossible to have anything other than a mediocre production. Misinterpretation sometimes comes from some director thinking, "I'm going to make something new out of the play." These people are just assholes. Most of the time, they're well-meaning and they would like to get the play done in a way that people like it. And as they work with actors, if the actor seems to be emoting up there, they don't know if it's real or if it's not. From the kind of acting work that we try to get people to do. And sometimes somebody has an intuitive moment, which is good, where they really experience. And they like that, but they think, "Oh, that's just the talent of the actor. I'm glad I got him or her in that role." And most of the nights, the talent of the actor doesn't come through, and it certainly doesn't come through every night at every place at the same intensity. So, some performance, you have good performances and bad performances. That's the best you can hope for, unless you do the other things. If you do the other things, then you have a chance to make the thing really come to life and give people the real theatrical experience, which is you move their psyche somewhere. It's not that they go and they have an appreciation for, "Oh, I get it, he's mad now." Well, I understand that, because I would be mad too if she did that to me. I get it, I understand it. It's all in the intellect. It's not, "I hope he kills that fucking bitch. She's a heartless, manipulative bitch to have done that to him." That's an audience going along with the play, with somebody who's done those things. The problem with Macbeth is he kills the wrong person. His life would be able to reach its pinnacle if he killed Lady Macbeth. But as long as he's tied in with Lady Macbeth in the way he is, then he's stuck. So when you're watching that, I don't know that there's anything in it that would say, "Oh, I hope he kills her," because there's no activity between them, which is antagonistic. There's only her pushing and her manipulating, and him, "Oh, okay, yeah, well, you're right, I should try to be, why shouldn't I be as good as him and be king too myself, which has told me I could be so at the first of the play, so why can't I be," and all of that business. But that doesn't come on his own initiative. It only comes on hers. And so if you saw that, you would see her manipulating him, and you would want to say, "Don't do it. Can't you see why she's doing it? Can't you see that she's manipulating her? Don't do it. Stop. You're a good man. Don't do this. Don't be seduced into becoming
The monster.
a monster."
The tyrant.
Exactly.
So
that you will feel in the audience when they've done all the things they're supposed to. But you will virtually never see a Macbeth where you'll feel that. What you'll do is, at the best, you'll say, "Oh, she's seducing him now. I get it. She's making him do it." It's all up here. It's all in your intellect. You're not identifying with him and saying, "Don't do it. Stop that. Don't listen to her." Instead, you're saying, "They're over there. I'm not over there with them. I'm not identifying with them. I only see them over there. I have an intellectual appreciation for what they're doing." That's what a mediocre play gives you. A mediocrely produced play gives one. And so the people in the audience say, "Well, it's just a play. I didn't like it so much. I don't really like Shakespeare. Nobody talks like that," or other things like that.
So these elements, as I was asking before, the steps, the step 1, step 2, step 3, 4, 5, and so forth, are things that you ultimately developed the order of things through the process of realizing what needed to be done and how to avoid the pitfalls and and you developed this through your work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's through a lifelong concern with, regardless of the fact that I have been active with others at different levels during my life, I have never stopped being active in my mind about these things.
Mm-hmm.
And my desire to do particular kinds of activities changes from time to time. My interest changes from time to time. But as I told you before, it's all a holistic approach. So if for some reason now I want to write things, then I'm doing exactly the same thing, but from the writer's angle.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm doing from the director's angle when I'm doing a director.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I've changed over the years. It's not that I've had any particular eureka moment. I have never stopped being active in my mind about these things.